fellas, let's go. Here we go. Big play. Trips open right, 334 stretch, Z post, X stop, on two. Ready?
This is my dad's show.
It's called the Quarterback Dadcast.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox with the Quarterback Dadcast. I want to say thanks to all of our listeners, thanks to all of our sponsors for all your support. We are continuing to enjoy this journey together, inspiring dads, but I want to take a minute now to talk about Acme Homes. You've heard me talk about them before, but I'm going to talk about them again. Bob Cumming, former college teammate, amazing leader, amazing home builder. They continue to take so much pride in the work they do, the craftsmanship, the attention to detail. Whether you're looking for a home up in Monroe, up in Sultan, up in Wenatchee, this is where they're doing their amazing things. So many people during the pandemic, as we have the ability to work from home, have decided to move out of the city to try to find homes where there's more acreage. Well, that's exactly what Bob and team at Acme Homes give you. So check out Valley Vista up in Monroe. Check out Daisy Meadows out in Sultan. And if you want to even go to Eastern Washington, check out Sienna Heights in Wenatchee. They're, again, amazing craftsmanship, amazing floor plans. You can visit them at acmehomeswa.com. And if you're interested in learning specifically about listings or mortgage opportunities, contact Jen at 425-308-8082 or Denise at 425-309-2318. So now, why are we doing a new ad? Because we want to talk about a partnership they have with Portage Bank. Kevin Jensen is one of the great lenders over there. He's the senior vice president. He's going to take care of you. And right now, if you obtain a mortgage through Portage Bank, Bob and team at Acme Homes are going to pay your $500 appraisal fee. I said that right. They're going to pay your $500 appraisal fee by buying a home through them, getting your mortgage through the folks at Portage Bank. So don't wait. Now's the time to contact Jen, contact Denise. Again, Jen's number is 425-308-8082. And again, Denise is at 425-309-2318. Visit acmehomeswa.com right now. Don't wait. Thank you again for listening to the Quarterback Dadcast. So with that, let's get right to today's episode. Well, hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox with the Quarterback Dadcast. And after attempt one of recording, it looks like we're now live here. It is November. This episode will come out soon. And I'm very excited to talk to our next guest. His name is Bruce Hardie. He is a chef by trade. He is born and raised. He's an Aussie. We're going to learn about Australia. He right now is the regional director for Keller Williams Realty Northwest of the Northwest region, which covers Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska. That's 8,000 associates and 37 offices. Oh yeah, he's also an investor. He's also the host of the Real Look podcast. But with all that great amazing things said, oh yeah, including 27 years as a realtor, we're here to talk to Bruce about Bruce the father. We're going to learn about life growing up in Australia, why he moved to Spokane. I'm guessing it's not to play in Hoop Fest, but we'll find out. But joking aside, Mr. Bruce Hardie, welcome to the Quarterback Dadcast.
Oh, g'day, Casey. Thanks so much for having me, mate. I mean, this is a pleasure to be here.
You bet. Well, I might be saying g'day to the rest of the people this afternoon, so I love it.
Well, you know, when you say that, it's just normal for me, so I don't hear it. People think that, oh, they're being cute or something, but that's how everybody speaks back home.
Love it. Well, let's dive in. So we always start with the first question I ask all my guests is, what are you most grateful for as a father right now?
What I'm most grateful for, my children, who are all grown and all live in Seattle now, are all really good friends. They have what they call a sibling dinner every month where they all come together. Two of them are married. And I got some joy this weekend when they, in the family text, they sent me pictures of them out in the national forest cutting down Christmas trees. All three of them, and two of them with their spouses. So it was very fun to see that. I love that. That's awesome. What I'm most grateful for.
I aspire, I got goosebumps as you told that. I aspire to have that experience once in life. I have two kids, Ryder and Riley. Ryder's 15, Riley is 13. And just being able to vision that day of, you're texting with your kids and their friends, and they are hopefully well-groomed people of society. I'm grateful for, I had a chance to play golf with my son on Sunday and with one of his friends from his golf team. And I also had a chance to be able to go see my daughter play basketball in the gym. And so it was like the double hit of, not not a slow moment that day, but it was so nice to be able to experience both, because I know those opportunities aren't going to be there as longer as they keep getting older and older and older on me.
Well, you say that, Casey, and I remember thinking back, when my kids were little, people would say to you all the time, "Oh, enjoy them, because this time won't last." And you're thinking, "Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm up to my ears," and then you realize it's true. That time when your kids are teenagers and they're involved in sports all the time, and you're just running. I miss that. Having all of my kids were involved in school activities. My son particularly was in sports, and my daughters were both drill team and cheer. And as high schools, it was just fun to sort of observe and watch that happen. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
don't miss it. You gotta enjoy that.
Every day, I wake up with gratitude in the morning, and it's just a great way to get the mind right to set the day. And a lot of times, I usually think, the universe, God, whatever people believe in, I say, thanks for waking me up today. I got another chance at this day. And then just as I look around and think, I'm like, man, I'm lucky. And then I see my kids and just try to enjoy each moment, because to your point, some might say, well, it's kind of corny. I don't. I look at it like, because it is speeding up. Time is not slowing down. So for me, I want to just enjoy it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting because you would think that, okay, now my kids are out of the house, I actually have more time. But you're right, it doesn't slow down. Everything is moving faster and faster all the time. And it's like, okay, I want to squeeze as much juice out of this lemon as I can, I want to bring it home.
I love it. Well, talk to me about, so tell me about the members of the Hardie team, the roles, who's playing what position, how many kids, etc.
Okay, well, the quarterback is my wife, Amy.
She's the general manager. You're the quarterback.
Yeah, I think I'm the gear guy. Yeah, my wife is really, she's the glue. She's the glue that holds it all together. She's incredible. And so it's just her, I, and the dog, Tucker, who are left in the house now. We have 3 awesome children. My oldest, Lauren, is married now. Her husband, Nathan, we love him. My son, Colin, just got married over Labor Day weekend to his wife, Isabella. And my youngest daughter, Allison, who is a nurse at the UW Medical Center.
Awesome. Very cool. So 3 kids, and everybody lives local.
Well, they're local for you, not for me.
Yeah, right.
4.5 hours over the mountain. But yeah, all 3 of them live within about 2 miles of each other in Seattle, near Lake Union.
How cool.
Yeah,
so
cool. Very cool.
Well, I want to hear about what life was like for you growing up. And I'd love to understand how your parents, what was life growing up like for you, and how your parents shaped you as a father.
That's a great question. How many hours is this podcast?
Hey, keep going.
Well, it's interesting. I think every family's messy, right? And certainly my family was no different. I am the oldest of 4. Okay. I have 2 brothers and a sister. And growing up in Australia, my father was a police officer, and we got transferred around the state. So in Australia, unlike the US, where they have city police, they're all state, right? So there are 8 states, and people don't. Here in the United States, people don't really get how big Australia is. It's about geographically the same size as the mainland US.
Wow.
Except instead of having 48 states, there are 8. So where we lived, where I grew up most of my life in Cairns, up on the northeast coast on the Great Barrier Reef, it is a 20-hour, and it's about halfway up the pointy bit on the east side of Australia. It's a 20-hour drive to the state capital.
Wow.
So, that's sort of driving from, Seattle to Denver. Yeah, basically. But anyway, so we got transferred around a lot. My father ultimately got out of the police force, became a marine engineer, so worked on coastal ships, running produce and machinery and all that up and down the coast. And my mother really took over running the house because he'd be gone a lot. And unfortunately, my father's an alcoholic as well, so that didn't help. So I became sort of, what that did for me was my mum needed my support. So the way she realized that we could function was if she would buy, the first place she bought was a guest house, and then it moved into a motel. And so we would own these properties, and mum would run it, and I would support her in that. So I became sort of the father figure of the house for pretty early on. I mean, when you're having to throw drunks out, at 3:00 in the morning because they're making all sorts of ruckus, and you're 16 years old when you're doing it,
Wow.
it sort of brings some reality to you pretty quickly. So I was in a hurry to grow up at that point, and I ended up graduating high school. I was going to be a marine biologist. Ultimately, got a job washing dishes over the holidays before I went to school. And 3 days later, they offered me an apprenticeship as a chef. And so I did that. And then after working in Australia, apprenticeships are a big deal in that you go to work, you work for less than minimum wage because you're being educated.
Yeah.
And it's similar to a 4-year degree. And what was interesting was the owners thought, well, we got this cheap labor here. We don't have to hire a dishwasher. We can just buy more dishes, and then he can do the dishes after the meal service is over. So I would get done at about 1:30 or 2 in the morning, and then go home, go to bed, get back in there by 10 a.m. To go and do it all over again. So I realized very quickly that I could work this hard for myself and make more money than that. And I went to my parents and I just said, hey, look, you've got this motel on the waterfront. If I pay you the equivalent of 2 rooms, so I pay rent on these 2 rooms like you would if they were full every night, let me convert it into a restaurant. And my mother said, only if you'll cook breakfast, because I hate cooking breakfast. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I went out and found none of the banks would talk to me. I'm 18 years old, and I found a finance company, and I borrowed more money than I could imagine at the time. It was $17,500.
Wow.
And then remodeled these 2 rooms into a 26-seat restaurant. And I was quite the marketing genius. It was called Bruce's Seafood Restaurant.
So how did you that takes, for a better word, balls for an 18-year-old kid to be able to say, I'm going to borrow $18,000. In this apprenticeship, is that where you learned the business, or was this just in your
No, I didn't.
feel?
I learned how to cook. And it's interesting. So I left the apprenticeship early to go do this because I was just being abused, basically. And what's interesting is a number of years later, in my second restaurant, which was a 100-seater, I hired a chef, and I became an apprentice to that chef. So I got to finish up my chef degree, so to speak,
Wow.
as an apprentice to the chef who was employed by me. So it was a little messy. But what's interesting about that, Casey, was it was a little restaurant, and I worked every day for 2 years, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And at the end, and I was making good money. In fact, I'll never forget that very first year. I went to my accountant, and he said, Bruce, there's $70,000 I can't account for. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, my wallet always had about $500 in it, and I was buying people drinks. I'm 18 years old, for goodness sake. I didn't know what I was doing. But anyway, after 2 years, I was so tired that I actually sold it, and I should have just taken a vacation. I didn't understand that. I sold it, and I went and rented windsurfers and surf skis out at the beach for 6 months.
That sounds nice.
It was. I got a great tan, but I was bored out of my gourd. And ultimately, a friend that I had from when I was an apprentice, he was an entertainer, and we talked, we'd meet, and we said, we should do a restaurant together. That'd be a good idea. And ultimately, we partnered up, went into a restaurant, made every mistake in the book. In fact, one was the partnership. 2 was we didn't do our due diligence. So we rented space on the second floor of a building right downtown. And so the second floor was a problem. But in addition to that intersection, I didn't realize that the city was going to close it down to build a pedestrian mall. So for 6 months, the only way you could get into that restaurant was over a series of planks, over ditches, through, it looked like a war zone. And one night my partner came in and he said, Bruce, I got good news and bad news. The good news is the restaurant's yours. Bad news is, so's all the debt. I'm out of here. And he left. And I thought, well, you know what? This is going to be okay. I've got the expenses cut down. I can get through. And I did. And then when the mall was complete, what I didn't realize was in Australia, unfortunately, Australians have treated the Aborigines very much like the US has Native Americans, right? We put them on reservations and we throw lots of money at them. They don't metabolize alcohol quite like Caucasians do. And in Cairns, it gets down to a chilly 85 degrees in the winter, and it's a sultry 95 in the summer. I mean, you could wear the same tank top, shorts, and flip-flops every day, and you'd be fine. And so at night, we would have large masses of people come in, and they'd be drinking, and they'd be, and the media loves to jump on that stuff and tell the stories, the fights, the sexual assaults, the robberies, all of that going on. And here I was in the middle of it. And, I'd have people call up and say, hey, Bruce, I'd like to make a reservation for 10 people tonight. And I'd say, great, what time? 8 o'clock. I said, no problem. And then they say, by the way, what's your address? And I said, it's 14B Shield Street. And they're like, big pause. Are you on the mall? And I'm like, I'm right on the very edge of the mall. Now, I'm in the middle of it, right? And then they'd say, well, I tell you what, we'll get back to you. So I got to a place where I had many, many nights with 0 people showing up. It was a 100-seat restaurant. And my mother who'd moved out of town had a little convenience store up on the Tablelands, and she loaned me money because I'd gone through all my credit. I'd burned everything up. And I realized I was about 3 days away from bankruptcy. And I was sitting out in the mall, and to be quite honest with you, Casey, I was hoping somebody would just come and mug me because for me, really, that was the low point in my life. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching.
How old were you? Sorry, Bruce, how old were you at this time?
Oh, boy, I must have been 22 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was sitting there and I was noticing that there were people walking through the mall who weren't afraid. And there were all these young people called backpackers. Now, in Australia, we have a backpacking culture like in Europe where you have hostels everywhere and young people will take a year off or 6 months off and travel. And Australia is very big on that. And what I knew about backpackers was they want to spend as little as possible on accommodation, as little as possible on food, so they can spend all their money on the fun things like, scuba diving, whitewater rafting, bungee jumping, all these cool, fun activities. And here I was. It was a $25 a plate a la carte silver service restaurant. I knew they wouldn't go in there. So I went inside. I closed the restaurant down because there was nobody in there anyway. And I spent the next 2 days remodeling it. And Casey, you are very fortunate because you haven't seen my handyman skills. I don't really have any. But anyway, after 2 days, I reopened and I called every hostel in town. I said, hi, my name's Bruce. I have a new restaurant in town. It's called Backpackers Restaurant. Today is our opening day, and to celebrate, we're giving a free 10-ounce beer with every meal. And by the way, it was $4, all you can eat one time through buffet. Now, I told my mother what I was going to do, and she thought I'd lost my mind. She came down to see.
I'm going to come.
She said she had to come down and see it. And I'm in the kitchen cooking, and she comes in. She says, Bruce, you got to come and see this. I'm like, Mom, I'm busy. No, I can't. She said, you have got to come and look at this. So I turned the fire off, walked out. There was a line along the buffet, went about 30 feet, down a flight of stairs, across the street, and down a block. And the first thing that went through my mind is, oh my God, I don't have enough food. So I ran back upstairs. I pulled all the money out of the cash register I could. I gave it to my mother. I said, Mom, go buy food. And she said, what do I get? I said, I don't care anything. I'll make it up. And back in those days, our supermarkets closed at 5. So the only things that were open were mom and pop corner stores. So, she came back with bags of frozen chicken wings and cans of pineapple. I made sweet and sour chicken. I mean, I had enough money, enough food to get through the evening, and then enough money at the end of the night to buy food and alcohol for the next day. At the end of 12 months, I net $1.4 million. in that business,
Wow.
and ultimately became the largest seller of alcohol in the city.
Wow.
So yeah, that was an interesting time in my life. And I actually had gotten married when I was 18. Oh, sorry, no, I got engaged at 18 and married at 20. And my ultimately, during all that financial stress, my ex-wife and I got separated. She was a nurse and decided she hated my restaurants. And ultimately, when I turned it around, she decided she became a restaurant manager. So I brought my family in because we're a community property country.
Okay.
And so my mother, who had supported me, my mother and father got half the business. And then my ex-wife and I split the other half. And we did that for another 5 years. So I actually had seen more of her in the next 5 than I had in the previous 4 that we were married.
Wow. Wow. So that's an amazing story. And I love people that have grit and resilience because that comes from something, right? And I'm sure not a day goes by that you don't think about those stories you've been through, and you, because sometimes people who have success, it's easy. They see it from the distance, like, oh, that guy's lucky, or it's easy. And it's not. You had to
It's
work for
not.
it.
No, doing my own podcast, The Real Look, I'm interviewing top agents from around the Northwest. And what's fascinating to me is the number of really, really successful people who've all had hardship, right? I mean, everybody does. And I think that's when you have the greatest learning
Mm-hmm.
is when it's not working, right? When everything's going good, you just feel like, hey, I'm on top of the world. And you know what? I'm just that good. When in actuality, we're not.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it's my college football coach. Shout out to Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. He always used to give me this great advice, which is if you have to tell people how good you are, you're not that good. When you're great, they're going to tell you.
Exactly.
And it always hit home for me. And every time I say it out loud, I still see Coach saying that to me. So talk to me about, I think maybe just like some of the lessons your parents taught you, like starting in that business. Like talk about some of the key takeaways you got from your parents that made you successful in those jobs.
You know what? I was never afraid of hard work, right? I again, in real estate, I know when I got into real estate, I worked hard, and that was easy for me because I'd already always worked hard. And in the years that we were in the motel business, somebody always had to be there. So if it wasn't my mother, it was typically me, right, as the oldest. And so I just that was life, right? That's just what you do. I assume everybody else was doing that. I didn't know any different, right? So I would say hard work. My mum really cares about people, and that caring shows through. And I try to take that from her and just say, okay, you know what? I used to actually have as my tagline. I don't know whose quote it was, but it was "Be kinder than necessary." For everybody is fighting their own battles, right? And you don't know who they are. And that's actually been for me very humbling since I've been with Keller Williams Realty. Where I joined this company, we were about 5,500 agents, and today we're 190,000 agents. And from time to time, people will come up to me because I'm an instructor for Keller Williams, so I get to teach all over the world. And they'll say, you know what, Bruce, thank you so much. You said this to me when I needed it. And to be honest with you, I don't even remember that I said it. And they say what a difference it made. And that's humbling and it's scary at the same time because I never want my words to ever knock anybody down or to hurt anybody.
Yep.
Right. I would rather lift them up if I can.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make you think about the power of your words.
Oh yeah, what we do matters. What we say matters. I think that's so good to think about that. I talk about that in my own coaching business, and even with my kids, I talk about that. So I want to understand how you decided to leave a $1.4 million restaurant and say, screw that, we're going to Spokane.
Yeah. Well, I used to hire backpackers to come and work in my restaurant because they always had a sphere of influence at the hostels they were living in.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 American guys from Cambridge, Maryland.
Okay.
And we became actually pretty good friends. They stayed for a long time and we became good friends. We'd go out and go rafting and, go out and have fun together. And it turned out that my wife was doing a semester abroad in her junior year of college. And one of her best friends in that program went to high school with these two boys. So that's how that's how my wife and I got introduced. Okay. And, I always say to people, if you've got kids in college who are looking to do a semester abroad, be careful what they bring back. So, yeah, I met my wife and it was instant for me. It took me some selling to convince her, I think. But ultimately we met, and then we communicated across the Pacific for about 18 months. And then I made the decision to move over here, lock, stock, and barrel. Sort of did the Napoleon thing. I sold everything. Business, house, car, furniture, the whole 9 yards, and moved over.
And that was 1990?
1990, yep. Okay. Moved to the United States.
So you're a chef. You move over here.
Yep.
You're thinking, and only this girl is amazing. I got that on my mind. How are we going to support? How are we going to survive? What's going through your mind now?
Well, and because she's a teacher, and because she'd done her semester abroad, after she graduated, she had 6 months of student teaching to do. So we lived in Stockton, California, and it was I was over on a tourist visa. And so I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And, I went into the immigration office in Sacramento, and I walked into the room. There were 3,000 seats. You take one of those numbers off those little red things. And I sat there for 6.5 hours and finally got up to the desk and realized the guy shared with me in about 10 seconds that I was missing a piece of paper. And that was it for me for the day. And I was like so disappointed. And so I realized that this was going to be hard. I ended up getting so bored just sitting around cleaning the house, waiting for Amy to come home. And I ended up getting a job as a cleaner, as a house cleaner. I was with 3 lovely Mexican ladies who I'm sure were all illegal as well. And we would go out and clean. I did that for about 6 weeks in the fall and winter of 1990 down there. And then we decided to come to Spokane to visit my wife's mother. And we were going to come up for 6 weeks, end up staying for almost a year. And then went to Portland. My wife got her graduate degree. She's a teacher of the deaf. And she runs a school now called Spokane Hope. It's a school for kids. It's an oral program for kids with cochlear implants and assistive devices.
Very cool.
So that's sort of how it all happened. It was sort of a whirlwind for me. And I came over here thinking, okay, I do not want to get back into restaurants because, as I said, restaurants are a lifestyle. They're not a job, a career, or a business. I mean, you live it. You work when everybody else plays. Right. And you usually play when everybody else is asleep. Right. And I realized that I'd been doing it for about 11 years in Australia. I didn't want to do it anymore. So I was committed to doing something different. Ultimately came up to Spokane, and they have an immigration office here. And at the time, they had 6 seats in the waiting room. So I did it all in Spokane. Wow. Got my green card, and then I was able to go work. And I've done a bunch of different things until ultimately, I went to work for a company called Employment Screening Services, and they do background checks on job applicants, and I sold the service. So most of my clients were HR directors in Fortune 500 companies who were all based back east. So I'd be up in the morning on the phones at 6 a.m. and, be done about 3 and then go to the gym. And that was my life. And I realized after about a year or two of that, I was getting cabin fever. And so I went to the realtor who sold us our house. And I said, do you think I'd be okay at real estate? She said, yeah, you'd probably be okay. I said, well, if I get my license, would you have me? And she said, well, aren't you going to shop around? I said, no, if you'll have me, I guess I'll come here. So I really was naive about everything that went on there. Mm-hmm. And so I joined an office of 18 women. So it was 18 women and me. It was a Coldwell Banker franchise. And it took me 9 months to sell my first house. So I did go back in sort of part-time into the restaurant business. I waited tables at night. And my wife was teaching, and we just had our first child, Lauren. She was just born. And then what I realized was that I just didn't know enough people here. And So I made an effort to get out and meet as many people as I could to build my sphere of influence. And I sold my first house. The next year I sold 20. Then I sold 40. Then I sold 80. Then I sold 106. Then 97, 103. Didn't matter how many nights I worked, how many weekends I worked. I just couldn't break through that. And by that point, I was at Keller Williams. And I learned a process we call going from E to P, from entrepreneurial to purposeful. And it really sort of requires 5 steps, right? Focus. What is it you want? And it's not enough to say, I want more, because more is just more. It's about getting clarity about what it is you really want. And then the second step is looking at options. And what this would presuppose is that you agree with the concept that people have lived before you, that whatever it is you want to accomplish, somebody has probably already done it.
Yep.
And there's not one way to do it. So go out and find the people who are doing what you want to accomplish, and then pick the best model for you, which is a model. And then you have to implement the systems of those models. So I went, that year, I went from 103 transactions a year to 205 in 1 year.
Wow.
And then I went to 255, and then I went to 250 again. Guess what? There we go. Another ceiling of achievement. So, it's been an interesting journey for me. I look back, I wanted to do something different. It was frustrating for me because I didn't realize in the US how important a college education is, right? In Australia, it doesn't have the same cachet, so to speak. I mean, in fact, when I was there as a kid, university's free. You just have to make your grades. So
Wow.
I was accepted to James Cook University to be a marine biologist. My last week of school, my biology teacher asked me to stay behind after class. And I said, sure, Mrs. Davis, what's going on? She said, Bruce, what are you going to do after high school? I said, well, I'm going to be a marine biologist. And she said, and this is back in 1979, she said, you do realize there are 3,000 unemployed marine biologists in Australia right now, did you? And I said, well, no, I didn't really know that. And she said, well, if you're serious about it, you're going to have to get your PhD. And I said, 8 years, I can do that. That's fine. And then, of course, I didn't go.
Wow.
So, but it was frustrating for me that I couldn't get a job over here. And that is really what drove me to be self-employed. I'd always been self-employed anyway. I like that because I like working for myself. I know that I'm going to give 100%.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox. I want to take a quick break to talk about my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafoods who continue to be just an amazing loyal sponsor. And for those of you who've tried it, thank you. For those of you who haven't, you're missing out. And now's the time to make sure that you visit catchsitkaseafoods.com and get some of those amazing smoked salmon. Get some of that amazing rockfish, blackfish, black cod, salmon, whatever it might be, whatever you like. But what's great about opportunities they have, now's the time to subscribe to a box so that you're going to get that reliable cadence of the best fish directly from the dock to the doorstep. And what's great about Catch Sitka Seafoods, they make it so easy. So those that maybe aren't the best chefs at home, doesn't matter. They're going to give you this beautiful, nice laminated recipe card that tells you exactly how long to cook it, whether you're going to barbecue, you're going to bake, you're going to fry, whatever the way you want to do it, they're going to make it easy. So please visit them today, catchsitkaseafoods.com. Sign up for a subscription so that you're going to get the best fish delivered directly to your door. You won't regret it. And just like my daughter Riley says, Dad, I don't even like fish. And she does now because of my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafood. So with that, let's get right back to today's episode.
And that's what I did. So that's how I ended up in real estate.
That's amazing. I love the story. And I almost feel like I could see everything happening in kind of real time. So do Lauren, Colin, and Allison, do they know the story, Dad's journey?
Yeah, they do. They do. They're just great kids. My oldest daughter actually just graduated last March with a master's degree from Princeton. Her and her husband both have a master's of divinity. And it was an interesting thing, right? As a kid, different kids experiment with different things, whether it be drugs or alcohol or whatever. I experienced with religion. So I did all the different denominations. I tried it all out, right? Ultimately became a little bit disillusioned with organized religion. Mm-hmm. And I was really clear in my mind that I wanted my children to have choices. I wanted them to come to the realization. And it's pretty fascinating because my wife would tell you that, I didn't want to go to church every weekend. Now, I believe I'm a spiritual person. I have my own beliefs. I feel like, our spirituality, I believe we are a spiritual being having a physical experience. Let me put it that way. But what's been interesting to me is watch my daughter make choices and to go down this path. And now she's so informed. I mean, she's a theology major. And I mean, I get to have wonderful conversations with her, which I love. So, her husband's a youth pastor over in Seattle, and she works in the office at the church. And they're the most happy people in the world. They just, before they went to work, between graduating and starting work, they hiked the PCT from Crater Lake to Canada. So, I mean, I just love that. And these are kids that want to make a difference in the world. Right. I mean, certainly in the eyes of my children, my carbon footprint is very large. And I'm okay with that.
Oh, it's amazing. That is amazing. I too, I'm a very, as I'm getting older, very spiritual. I don't follow like I don't go to church every Sunday either. I think what I love about like my spirituality is like, I like this might be my version of church today, talking to you. And if I get the kind of the warm butterfly feeling, that's something's happening bigger than any of us. I don't know what it is. And unfortunately, at the time of recording, this is November 22nd. Speaking of dads, my dad's we believe at his potentially at the end of getting close to end of life. He's in hospice right now. So I've been going through that journey, and this past week has been amazing. So when this airs, my father's either going to be in another place or he's still going to be with us. But it's, I tend to be a naive optimist, and I try to always look at things from a positive perspective. And I really try to teach my kids that, and they know the journey that my wife and I have been on taking care of my dad, but I still try to make sure they know. And then I know like there's still something to positive. Like I've got reconnected with my cousin, who I've not seen in 15 years. And now I've talked to her more times this past week than I have in 10 years. So I think that's what I love about, like, there is more going on than we know.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And, we've gotten to go through this with my father-in-law's, okay, it's going to be complicated. My father-in-law's wife's mother just passed last year at 95 and had dementia, right? So what you realize is there's these phases and how difficult it is. It's given me a greater understanding and perhaps a better empathy for people who go through this, and yourself included. Nobody wants to go through that, and yet it is part of our lives going forward, right? Yeah. I mean, as we're all getting older, watching that happen. So I have no doubt that there'll be more and more of us who experience that. So I get
we went through it way younger. I think I started dealing with this at 23 years old.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I'm 45 now. And so but I still don't look at it like, oh man, I got gypped. I look at it as like, thank God or thank something. I was in a mental spot to handle it. I have an amazing wife, Carrie, who really has been an amazing rock through this journey. I had a job that allowed me flexibility. I had a job that gave me the job I used to work at that, the means of just be able to support him financially, emotionally. And, I actually talked a lot about this in the very second episode, actually the first episode, pardon me, when I came out. I started this podcast back in 2020. So, I think that's the power of fatherhood is like my wife used to always say we have 18 seasons. You think about it in sport to make an impact. And there's teachable moments each day if you look for them. And there's curiosity moments for us to learn as dads, which is why one of the things I love about doing this podcast, Bruce, is selfishly, I get to learn from guys like you, Well,
and it's interesting you say that because it does, when you're going through it, you feel like your kids don't listen to you. And what is so cool is when they're older and they sort of regurgitate something back to you that you said to them years ago, right? A lesson that you hoped that they got and you weren't really sure at the time whether or not it actually connected. And to have that happen, that is so cool because You're right. We're learning all the way. And I remember thinking how I felt so useless when my daughter was born. Right in the delivery room, I'm like, what do I do? I'm useless. I'm officially useless. And then what you realize is the reason that these kids can't really move is because you don't know what to do with them. And you're just sort of learning as they start to get more and more mobile, right? It's you're building the plane while you're flying, so to speak. And that has been an interesting experience. And it is interesting because I thought, I'm not going to treat my youngest any different than I did my oldest. And of course, that's not what happened. Uh, you realize that there is something about that pecking order, right? I noticed with my oldest, I was much more strict, and and then I realized that a lot of the things that I was strict about with her really didn't matter, right? It was stuff that I could let go with the next two, so to speak. So a lot of lessons that absolutely do take place there.
Well, you said something a second ago, and I want to make sure that I'd love to give you the world's least handiest person, but unfortunately, Bruce, I own that. So I'll let you take Australia's least handiest. I'm taking America's.
Go. Okay, yeah.
So one thing you and I will never do, we're never starting a construction company.
No, we're not.
We're going to make insurance companies rich, but the insurance, we are not going to build.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if it's a mindset. Like I'm a great hard worker. I love supporting people. I don't have the mind to see it first. Like my buddies, I have some friends who are really handy. My father-in-law, he's like MacGyver. If you remember that TV show, he could fix anything. Where I'm just not wired that way. So I like to make fun of myself about it and just poke fun because, but I enjoy getting handy with stuff. I don't have the mindset to go after.
I'm with you on that, and it's sort of the subheading under my name would be "No job too small it cannot be subcontracted out."
Yeah, keep America going. Just keep outsourcing everything.
Absolutely, keep the economy happening.
So as you think about that business growth, which was intense, and I only can imagine the organizational, the mindset, the taking care of yourself, maybe from an exercise perspective, staying present, being a good dad, being a good husband. Talk about how you did it, and maybe what was some of the ups, the downs, maybe for other dads out there who are listening, they're like seeing business growth and they're feeling the stress, and maybe talk to them. How'd you get through it?
One, I give all credit to my wife, Amy. I mean, she's been the rock of Gibraltar, right, for our family, and the consistency. One of the things I think, Casey, is I think this concept of striving for a balanced life is a myth. I don't think there is such a thing as a balanced life. And I use the analogy of a pendulum. When a pendulum swings, when is it balanced? And really the only time is when it's stopped, right? It's dead. And the question is how far out of balance are we willing to allow our life to go before we exert enough pressure to bring it back? But understand, when you push it back, it's not going to stop there. It's going to go out the other way. So I believe we can live a life that is a small arc, or we can live a life that looks like this, which would be a large arc, right?
Right.
And I've lived both, and this is better. Right. Is what I've discovered. And I share this story in one of my classes that I do, and we have a company, we use rituals, and one of the rituals is the be there rule. And the be there rule says, wherever you are, be there. And about 24 years ago, my oldest daughter was 4, my son was 2. And I was working late, selling real estate. I was driving home one afternoon, and I get a call on my Motorola flip phone, the one that came after the brick. And it was interesting because there were typos on the flyer, in the info box, on the sign. And this seller was tearing me up one side and down the other, right? Just absolutely reaming me for, these mistakes. And by the way, back in those days, I mean, to print a colored flyer was about $1.50 a piece to do it. And I'm apologizing all over myself, and I'm terribly sorry. I'll get new ones done. We'll have them out to you in the morning, yada, yada, yada. He just wouldn't stop. And he was still on the phone talking to me as I came up to my house. I hit the garage door opener. I drove in the garage. I get out of my car, put my briefcase over my shoulder, and he's still yammering at me. I walk in my back door, and my two children come running up, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," and they glob onto my legs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself in that moment going, "Shh," and I pushed them away. And I realized in that moment, Casey, I was screwed up.
Mm.
These two little people were the most important people in my world, and I didn't even like this guy. So I said, I have to go now, and I hung up on him. And I made a commitment to myself. And the commitment was that I would never, ever walk into my home again on the phone.
Yeah, love it.
Now, it was interesting over the next 20 years, I'd be parked around the corner on the phone as my wife would drive by, taking the kids to football practice or whatever. But I wasn't willing to do that because, wherever you are, be there. When we're at work, be there. Like for you and I right now, I mean, I'm here in the moment with you.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But when you're with your family, your loved ones, you need to be there. It sounds very sort of coy, right? But people say, well, love is spelled Time. And I'm not sure that it's necessarily great gobs of time, but it's focus time, the time that you spend with each other.
Yep. You said a quote a second ago. I want to make sure I heard it, or maybe repeat. You said, if wherever you are, be there. Is that what you said?
The be there rule. Wherever you are, be there.
I love that. Please, if you're taking notes, everybody, write that down. And I will make sure it's wherever you are, be there. I love the advice of never walk into the house with the phone. I mean, no one's going to be perfect. Stuff might be happening, but what a great tip for dads out there not to bring stress home. And right now in the environment where some of us are still working remotely, you go from one room to the other and there's no really downtime. So maybe give yourself a break and take a deep breath, maybe walk out the back door, knock on the front door, and to make you feel like you're entering a new place. But I'd love that. Love is spelled with time. And you're making me think back through the journey I'm going through with my dad over the past week. And I can't tell you last time I've been able to spend 3 hours without a cell phone, a computer, and just sit by his bedside. He wasn't talking, but I could touch him. I could rub his head. I could tell him I loved him, and whether you heard me or not, but I was there.
Absolutely.
And I love that advice. So one of the questions I like asking dads, and you've done it well. You got 3 kids who are in society thriving. So congrats to you and Amy, however you did it. Congrats, and hopefully we can take some wisdom from you today. Is how there's no such thing as a perfect projected, right? There's going to be some bumps, and I like to understand, like, what was an area of your dad game that maybe you struggled with that you can, if you feel comfortable sharing, that you had to kind of get yourself right and be able to say, okay, here's an area that I need to get better. I mean, and I'll maybe lead my witness. For me, Bruce, mine is patience. Mm-hmm. I'm very self-aware if I feel like, the non-patient Casey's coming, how do we slow this thing down? So as I said, tell me what resonates with you.
Yeah, I totally identify with that. I'm a very driven person, and it's interesting to me that none of my children want to follow me into this, into the entrepreneurial sort of space. My son's he's a biochemist, works for a Seattle Genetics, working on cancer drugs. And my youngest daughter, I think I mentioned, is a nurse. So, and what I would push hard as well. What I realized as well is that it's fascinating to me, even today particularly. I'm not as communicative as I could be. Right, that's the thing I'm constantly working on. My wife constantly communicates with the children and with me, and I mean, her biggest complaint about me is I don't communicate enough. Right, I tend to live in my head. Occasionally, and she said, "You never think of me because you didn't call me." And I'm like, "No, I think of you all the time. Didn't you get that?" So I think that is one piece that really being purposeful about that, about your communication. I'm now at a place where I'm being purposeful about doing something with my kids individually. Right. So 2 weeks ago, I got to take my son. We're into fly fishing, and I got to take him to Alaska to go and chase some big fish, which was very, very fun. I mean, and it was a fast 2-day weekend because he's a working man now, and he just got married, so he used up all of his PTO. So, but it was just so cool to just be there in the boat with him and the guide, and just going out and um, just talking about life, right? Just getting his experience. And, here he is, a newlywed, and he's just over the moon about everything. It's just so fun to experience that. And to do the same thing with my girls, go and find something that we like to do together. And what's interesting is my wife and I love to travel, and we started traveling with our children from a very, very young age. In fact, they are great flyers, great travelers. And it was funny because my wife would always load me up with a diaper bag, which would be just huge. And when the kids would start to get fussy on the plane, she would pull something out that they'd never seen before. And all of a sudden there's a lollipop, or there's something that they'd never seen in there. And people would often turn around and say, "Oh my gosh, your kids are so well behaved." And, we're looking like we're fried from trying to keep them under control. And so because they got so good, they love to travel, and we love to travel with them. So that becomes a point. They all did a semester abroad, all traveled. My daughter was in France. My youngest daughter was in Australia. She went to Perth. And then my son did a trip all over Europe. And to be able to go and visit with them and hang out with them in those environments was really impactful for us all.
Wow. What, if you're sat back and thought, like from a dad's perspective, like why, and I'm just I'm a super curious person, but like, my dad was 34 years. He sold appliances for Whirlpool. I got into selling. I sold staffing and consulting services. Now I'm doing my own thing that I'm surrendering to the universe. So where it's taking me, I'm not sure, but I'm having a blast. For you, like being an entrepreneur, your dad got a cop to a marine biologist engineer. You thought you wanted to be in marine biology. Your kids are kind of following a little bit what Grandpa did. Did you ever think back like why they did or why they didn't?
Yeah, no, I again, I think everybody's finding their path. My son he earned a full ride academic to Baylor, and
Wow.
He was going pre-med, only to realize that medicine wasn't what he wanted to do. And, there's a gateway class in medicine, and it's organic chemistry. That's the one that flushes people out. And he loved it. I mean, for him, that was him finding this is what I want to do. And
wow. How cool.
Yeah, you don't know. Right. And I do think, I love business. I love business. And yet not any of my children have any interest at all in that. And, I see my youngest who's got her heart and her empathy. And, a shout out to all of our medical workers. Man, you think what the last almost 2 years have been like for them. In fact, my daughter was sharing how one of her friends who's a nurse quit because she was tired of putting people in body bags. It was just getting too much, right? And you don't realize that capacity for empathy and caring. And there are nights where she'll come home and she'll just have to tell us about a day and cry, and your heart breaks for them. And you realize that these people we don't really understand if we're not walking in their shoes.
No, that hits me in the heart, obviously, and everybody listening right now. Obviously, we're hopefully by the time this episode comes out here within a few weeks to a month that we are doing better. Cases are coming down, hospitalizations are going down. We're getting healthier. We're opening back up. But it still is I've talked to my kids about this. I was like, think about it when I'm a grandpa, you're married. We're going to say, do you remember when you had to wear a mask at school, and then you actually had to take class from a computer for 4 months or then for a full year? Like, think about that, and you still sometimes I think like, God, what are we living through? But it's this nightmare's legit.
You did say you're an optimist. The other side of that coin is, you remember those days when we didn't have to wear masks ever? We could just go out. I mean, and it does blow your mind, right? That we're experiencing this right now, and just how transmissible this is, and how much our lives have changed.
Big time.
So whether it goes back to the way it was, I'm not sure.
I know. I can't imagine air travel. That's one it'll be interesting to see. Well, before we get into the fun lightning round, I want to dive into having you kind of summarize for dads at home that have listened to your story, that have learned from you, that have heard what you and I've talked about. If you were to kind of summarize everything for three actionable tasks, where they two or three, where fathers can be the ultimate quarterback of their house, that ultimate leader. And again, summarizing what we talked about, what are some two or three things that come to mind, Bruce?
Number one is how you show up, how you behave, leaves an indelible impression on your children. Respect your wife. Respect their mother, and one of the things I love to see. Right, I always I used to say it was fun. Girls, all boys are bad except for dad. Right, and my goal was to set a high bar for any of the men that they would have in their life, and for my son to be respectful of women and particularly of his wife. So yeah, I think you model that behavior. You don't have to say it, but you have to model it, right? I mean, this concept of be a gentleman, right? It's sort of a lot of those quaint customs, like holding the door open or standing when somebody comes. I mean, that seems old fashioned, but it says volumes.
Makes
I
a
would say
difference.
that would be the first one. And I think the other one is you used the word beginning right, grit. I mean, being a parent, you have to have grit. You can't give up, right?
No.
One of the things I realized is in our relationships with our children, nobody should be looking to pull the ripcord, right? We're not jettisoning out of this relationship. We've got to be we're in this for life. And I think that it's messy, and there are times when you got to take a breath, you got to go and think about it, and I think that that's the thing that I've probably learned more as I've gotten older and experienced with my kids is not allowing my reaction to be my response. Right,
I love that one.
Okay, I'm just mad and I respond mad. I need to just sort of put myself in timeout and say, okay, what were they wanting to do here? What was the motivation here?
Well, let me summarize here. How you show up matters, and how you behave matters. Respect your mother, respect their wife. Kids are going to see it. Always be a gentleman. Be gritty. Seek the grittiness to be that ultimate dad, quarterback of your household, because you might get a water break, but the clock's there's another quarter. The game's never going to end. It's infinite game, like the book Simon Sinek wrote. And then I love this one. Don't let the reaction be the response. I'm writing that one down, and hopefully people are listening wrote that down. One of the best pieces of advice, Bruce, I got in my life is from a first boss out of college. He said, you can be right or get what you want. Rarely do you get both. I think for any business owners out there, it's a great interview question. Ask it. If someone says, I want to be right, don't hire them. It means they're a massive egomaniac, right? Getting what we want means you want to see the big picture. And so, someone who struggles with patience, but I'm self-aware about it. My dad, he was very, very impatient, which is wonder where I learned that, right? And I talk about this gap in my personality to my kids, because I want them to I want them to learn that it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to talk about where you want to get better on, so they aren't afraid to say what they're not good at, or where there might be an opportunity to improve. But I know I love that mindset, and I love that what you talked about. It really, really hits home. So nice job. All right, now, my good man, you're going to go into the mind of a college quarterback from America who has a screw loose. And I will warn you. And so my job is to ask you questions that randomly come to mind. I don't think these through. They go on the spot, see how witty I can become. My job is to try to get you to giggle. Your job is to answer as quickly as you can. Are you ready?
All right, I'll try.
Okay. I don't know if you drink beer or not, but if you were, Foster's or Bud Light?
Oh, yuck.
I win
Oh yeah, you do.
out of the gate.
The best of the worst. I don't know.
I'm not taking either of them.
Me either.
Okay, good. If you were to book a vacation right now, where are you going?
I would go to Italy. I love Italy. I love the food. I love the people. My bucket list is to ultimately, I love history and I'd love to study it in the places it actually happened. And there's a lot of history there.
What city in Italy would you go see?
Well, I've been to a few already. I haven't been to Venice. I do want to see it before it sinks. And Florence. I love Florence.
Okay. Venice is the only place I've been to in Italy. It's amazing. It's amazing. If I was to go into your phone and play the last song played, what would it be?
The last song played was, because I just listened to it this morning, it was Boston.
Oh, there we go.
Yep. More Than a Feeling.
I was just going to guess that one. Yeah, I love it. Great. Boston's a great, sometimes I throw on Boston when I work out in the morning. Boston Greatest Hits. Gets me going.
They are awesome. They were awesome. They were really good.
If I was to come to your house tonight for dinner, what are you cooking?
Tonight it is going to be garlic prawns on rice.
That sounds really good. And then if you were to go fishing right now, where are we going?
The Amazon, chasing peacock bass.
Wow. I've never even heard of that in my entire life. The Amazon I have, peacock bass I have not. So you just educated me more.
Google them. Okay. You'll see what they look like.
Okay. Love it. If there was a book written about your life, what would be the title?
Oh, that's a good one. If there was a book written about my life, Despite Himself.
I like it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's, it's funny as I think about this, Casey, this conversation, I hear people say, what do you regret in life? And what I realized is the good, the bad, the ugly has all got me to where I am. And where I am right now, I'm really happy.
Awesome.
Right. And it couldn't have been different, because if it was, I wouldn't be where I'm at. Right.
So true.
So true. That's sort of how I feel.
I don't know if you remember, do you know 80s American comedy movies? Well,
probably. Okay.
What is your favorite American comedy 80s movie? Because I think there's so many.
Was Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Yeah. Was that an 80s movie?
We'll count that. Point for Bruce. Okay, lastly, the movie now, the book written Despite Himself has gone on to be an Amazon bestseller, New York Times bestseller. Now they're going to make a movie of this thing. You are the casting director. Who is starring Bruce?
Well, he's got to be an Aussie. How about Hugh Jackman?
There we go. Boom. The Emmy Award winning. There we go. All right. The lightning round is over. You made it unscathed. We both laughed, which made it fun. This has been a blast. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been super inspiring. And I love the grit and the resilience. And it's not surprising you're doing what you're doing now. It's not surprising the success you've had. For anybody out there listening right now that said, hey, I think I want to get into real estate, or I want to learn more about what Bruce is doing, or I want to learn about this podcast, where can I send them so they can learn more about you?
You know what? They could, how about to our website, which is KWNWR.com, which stands for Keller Williams Northwest Region.com, okay. KWNWR.com. Okay. And actually, one of the things, Casey, if somebody is thinking about getting into real estate, Keller Williams has done something that nobody's ever done before, and that is put together a nationwide real estate school. And we actually allow people, well, not allow, we help people get their real estate license for free.
Wow.
It's not available all yet in all states, but it is in the state of Washington. So if somebody wants to know about that, we can help them out. And by the way, one of the things that attracted me to real estate was, one, there's no ceiling on this. You can take it as big as you want. And real estate's an interesting industry, because we're all competitors, and yet we all agree to cooperate with one another. And it's equal opportunity, but unequal reward. And what I mean by that is everybody has the same opportunity, but not everybody gets the same rewards from it. Right. And it's about doing the right things. And people have lived before you, so do the right things.
I love that. I'm glad. Shout out to Carla Clark. Shout out to Pam Ranch for connecting us, because when I wrote a book that's about, I think, common sense, but it's not commonly practiced. And I've as the author, I've learned for myself. But chapter 1's all about power of the golden rule. Chapter 3 is all about listening, not hearing. And you've talked about a lot of those two key themes I've heard from you today about what's being present, whether it's, the work you're talking about is real estate. There's always a choice, a slide edge moment. What are we going to do? And hopefully we pick the angel, not the devil, on our shoulder, because karma is legit. I believe in it. It always comes back to you. So I will make sure I send you then to KW, NWR. Any other place you recommend they learn more about what you're up to?
No, I mean, yeah, that's really what I'm doing right now. I'm really focused on that. And I love telling the story of our people. That's where you'll get to hear those stories. One of the things that's key with real estate, and I think in life in general, Casey, is that it's a relationship business, and there is value in the relationships. And I too am thankful that Carla and Pam connected us. This has really been a treat for me.
Oh, it's been fun. Well, you've done a heck of a job articulating your story. I want to take a moment. So this episode, I want to say, huge shout out to Catch Sitka Seafoods. Bruce, if you're a man of the fish, hopefully you'll appreciate this. They are a small fish company. They ship directly from dock to door from Sitka, Alaska. They got hit by COVID. They've done a heck of a job doing their best to stay alive. Now they're making it so easy for people to have an amazing seafood dinner. They ship it directly to you. They give you this nice, pretty recipe card. You as a chef would probably appreciate that. Whether people like to bake it, fry it, saute it, barbecue, doesn't matter. They make it easy. Recipes on their website. So please, if you're thinking about supporting anybody, please give them a shout. I always like to give a funny story to my daughter, Riley, she called herself a pizzatarian. Because she didn't like fish, but she now eats their fish. So that's proof that they have great product. And I also shout out to Acme Homes, Washington, Bob Cumming and team. They're a great home builder in the state of Washington. So if there's some folks who are maybe Keller Williams and the folks at Acme, maybe there's some way for you guys to help share each other's love and support each other. But with that, I want to say thanks to all listeners. Thanks for everybody for supporting us along this journey of the Quarterback Dadcast. Bruce, thank you again for your time, and have a great holiday season.
Thanks so much. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.